Alrighty, so we're just going to be looking at the second part of exercise 7.4. And this exercise has mainly more calculations with standard form versus writing the numbers in standard form, because we already covered that in part 1. So we're going to be looking at multiplying, dividing, and a few addition and subtraction problems in standard form. Okay, so let's jump right in. So we have 3 times 10 to the 6 being multiplied by 4 times 10 to the third power. And I'm just going to go through the technique that we want to employ when working with numbers in standard form and doing calculations. So the first thing that I want to do is look at that 3 and that 4. Those two numbers are the whole number component of that working and of that problem. And therefore we want to multiply those two together. Now the other part are the powers of 10, and I'm just going to do a similar calculation multiplying those two together. Very good. All right, now let's work this out. 3 times 4 is 12 times 10 to the 6th times 10 to the 3rd. What do I do when I multiply, same base, what do I do with my indices? Hopefully you're remembering that we have to add those indices. 6 plus 3 gives me 9. Now I have a little note right here in my bubble that reminds me that my final answer must be in standard form. Now let's take a look at this number and find out, is that number in standard form? Is 12 times 10 to the 9th power in standard form? Now if you remember what standard form is, the value of a has to be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. 12 happens to be greater than 10, and therefore I know for sure this number is not in standard form. So whenever you're finished your working, always stop and check, is my final answer in standard form? Okay? Now in order to get this number in standard form, I'm going to just do a bit of isolation here for a minute. I am going to focus on the part that is not yet in standard form, that 12. And the first thing that I'm going to do is write 12 in standard form. And 12 in standard form, if I follow the same technique from the last video, 7.4 part 1, where would I put this decimal point to create a number that is between 1 and 10? And you guessed it, I put the decimal point somewhere in the middle there. So that would be 1.2 times 10 to the, and what power of 10 would I multiply 1.2 by to get 12? Of course, that would be 10 to the first power. Now I'm just going to write back my 10 to the 9th, okay? Because that was in the problem before. That was a part of my answer regardless. Okay, so now how am I going to simplify what I have here? Well, I have 2 parts to that final answer, 10 to the 1 and 10 to the 9th, and I'm just going to condense that to give a final answer of 1.2 times 10 to the 9 plus 1 is 10. Very good. And hopefully everyone can follow that example so far. Good. So now let's look at part B. And part B says 6 times 10 to the 7th divided by 5 times 10 to the negative 2. Let's be very careful when working with that negative exponent in this question. All right, so let's go. Now following the same technique, I'm going to do 6 divided by 5. And that's going to be times the power of 10 is 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the negative 2. We're just going to keep those in brackets. And 6 divided by 5 happens to be 1.2 multiplied. And this, I'm going to just write this out just to show you, because I do not want you to make any mistakes or fall prone to this. It's 10 to the 7th, and when I'm dividing, I know that I must subtract And I'm going to be subtracting here a negative 2. Good. So let's make sure we watch those negatives. So I have 1.2 times 10 to the, when I have two negative signs, in a situation like that, we know they simplify to me adding those two numbers, which is really 10 to the 9th power. Now, I must stop and ask myself, is this number in standard form? Well, it is 1.2, which is greater than 1, but less than 10. So I'm comfortable that that answer is okay. Okay, so now hopefully all of that is pretty clear, and we're just going to move on to our final example. I'm actually going to do this one hopefully in a different color so we can make the distinction. All right, now we have 3 times 10 to the 4th power plus 2 times 10 to the 5th power. And what we want to do with these questions at this stage is we want to expand this number. So write it in its expanded form. 3 times 10 to the 4th happens to be 30,000 plus 2 times 10 to the 5th happens to be 200,000. Let's put in my commas there. Very good. And that gives me a final answer of 230,000. But is that my final answer? Now you have to pay attention to what the bubble says right here. You must give your final answer in standard form. So though it is correct, your teacher may penalize you because your final answer is not in standard form. So let's try to write this number now in standard form. Where would I put the decimal place to create a number that is between 1 and 10? And that decimal place would go somewhere there. All right, so let's go now. It's really 2.3 times 10 to the, and what power would I be multiplying there? 10 to the 5th power. That would be my final answer. Now, just to go over a few things, always double check that your final answer is in standard form. And remember what standard form is. You're looking for a number that is between 1 and 10, 1 being included, and multiplying by a power of 10 where n is an integer. Very good. And you just want to be very careful when working with your negatives. You want to make sure you're either writing it out properly or taking being very careful when you're working those out mentally. Okay? Well, hopefully that was a very helpful video, and go right ahead into 7.4.